I've put in a lot of effort to reach my current position in life. I'm on the verge of becoming a millionaire, and it's all because I worked my way up the corporate ladder. I also developed a close friendship with my boss. On top of that, I have a wonderful wife. Everything in my life was going smoothly until I discovered that my wife was cheating on me. What's even worse is that the reason I'm getting promotions at work is because she's having an affair with my boss. And the situation took a turn for the worse when I decided to expose their relationship at one of our company's major annual events, attended by all employees, including the billionaire owner. It's a crazy situation. Hello, my name is John, and I'm currently facing an extremely stressful situation. My life used to be quite simple, with a fulfilling career and a loving relationship. I grew up as the only child of my parents, and I was fortunate to witness their deep love for each other. My father worked diligently as an office clerk, while my mother took on various jobs, although nothing stable. Financially, we were doing fine. We had a home which my mother had acquired as part of our inheritance. That was pretty much my background. I didn't live a lavish life, but I received love from some of the top colleges in the country. I have vivid memories of the day I received my scholarship letter, and those colleges never made me feel like I was from a less privileged background. I attended a public school and excelled academically. After completing my schooling, I earned a scholarship for my master's in business. My parents were extremely proud of me, and at 18 years old, I headed off to college, living far away from them. I must admit I missed them a lot. College turned out to be emotionally challenging for me because that's where I realized the significance of money. Many of my peers had a lot of it. I discovered certain unspoken rules that govern the world we live in, rules I hadn't been aware of until I got to college. You could only gain entry into the best clubs if you were popular. Popularity often hinged on having an attractive girlfriend, wealth, and possessing a cool car to buy gifts for her. Essentially, life boiled down to having money, which I didn't have much of except for the allowance my father sent me for books and emergencies. My education was fully funded and I never asked for more. However, at a young age, I made a firm decision that I wanted to become wealthy so that my future children wouldn't just have love in abundance, but also a substantial amount of money. When there aren't any distractions, you tend to focus on your studies. That's exactly what I did. I dedicated myself to studying diligently and eventually secured a pretty decent job with one of the biggest corporations as an entry-level executive. Although the pay was higher than what you'd typically get at an entry level, I felt a sense of pride in how far I had come. With my first paycheck, I purchased tickets for my parents to visit me in New York, where I currently reside. I didn't have a lot of money to show them around or treat them to a fancy dinner, but I still wanted them to see how well I was doing. They stayed with me in my rented apartment, which I shared with a colleague from my office. I was proud of my accomplishments and wanted them to see my new life. Things were going well for me. Within a year, I had been promoted to a team leader. I managed to secure a rented apartment where I could live on my own, and life was actually quite enjoyable. That's when I had the pleasure of meeting my next-door neighbor, Sarah. She was the most stunning woman I had ever seen. When you've gone without a girlfriend for a long time, you can become a bit apprehensive about making the first move. I was lucky because one day, she took the initiative and invited me over for coffee at her place. I was overjoyed and tried to contain my excitement, but I couldn't help but smile and accept her invitation with enthusiasm, saying, "Sure." Our love story with Sarah began, and we quickly started dating. After another promotion, and becoming the head of my department, I proposed to her, and she said yes. Life was better than I could have imagined. We planned a summer wedding with close friends and family, and both sets of parents blessed our union. Just 4 years after college, I had a great, well-paying job in New York, and I was married. It felt surreal. Over the next 2 years, I focused on my career, aiming to provide for my future family and buy a house before having kids. Sarah supported my career, never complaining about the time I couldn't spend with her. We believed in climbing the corporate ladder as newlyweds. I became friends with my boss, Mike, who happens to be the CEO of our company. It's impressive that he achieved such success at a young age, even though he's only in his late 30s. He's also married to Emily. 4 of us became close friends, which helped me achieve my goals more quickly. Sarah was also busy pursuing her dream as a fashion designer, making strides toward success. We both had hectic lives but enjoyed our marriage. Despite coming home late every night, we always waited for each other to have dinner together. I was getting closer to my goals and planned to discuss having children with Sarah in the next 6 months. That night, I eagerly returned home, ready to have that conversation. However, to my disappointment, Sarah never showed up, and I grew tired, falling asleep on the couch. The next morning when I woke up, she was still asleep in the bedroom. I left her a text and headed to the office. The following days unfolded similarly. Sarah returned home much later than expected, and I refrained from questioning her because our busy schedules often kept us apart. However, an unsettling feeling began to creep in. After a week of not seeing each other, I felt compelled to investigate what was happening. Before resorting to detective work, I attempted to discuss her schedule multiple times, but she offered only vague answers. After work one day, I went directly to Sarah's workplace, only to find it empty. I called her from outside her office to ask where she was. When she answered, I heard music in the background. She said, "Hi baby, I'll be late today, I'm sorry. Work's been crazy and we'll be stuck at the office all night." Hee hee. My heart sank and I couldn't utter a word. I ended the call, tears clouding my vision. Even though my sight was blurry, I grasped the situation. Sarah was having an affair. It seemed like the only logical explanation for everything that was happening. Unable to think clearly, I sought solace in a nearby bar. After 4 drinks, I lost count, and ended up passed out on the bar floor. The waiter woke me up at 3 a.m. when they were closing, and I stumbled my way home. Of course, Sarah wasn't there. My head was spinning, and I somehow managed to fall asleep. I woke up well past office hours and heard noise coming from the kitchen. I found Sarah casually cooking, which left me confused. Could I be overthinking this? There was a chance they were working somewhere else, not at the office. She made a remark about my drinking and dozing off, and I just smiled, saying nothing. I inquired about her whereabouts the previous night because I wanted to discuss something important and take her out to dinner. My suspicions were confirmed when she mentioned once again that she had been at her office all night working. I felt the need to uncover the reason behind her lie, but I was afraid to discover the truth. I made a call to my workplace, informing them that I wouldn't be coming in. My plan was to find some clues to understand what was happening and why. She left for work around noon, and I stayed behind, claiming not to feel well. She gave me a goodbye kiss on the forehead and promised to return by 7. After she left, I waited for about 5 minutes before following her. She got into her car and drove in the direction of her office, which seemed to confirm her story. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary or suspicious. I waited in my car at her office for the next half hour, hoping for some revelation, but nothing occurred. Around 5 p.m., when I was about to give up and leave, I saw my boss's car pull into the driveway. I quickly ducked into my car, not wanting him to see me, as I had essentially been spying on my wife and missing work for no apparent reason. However, instead of passing by me, he parked his car next to mine, and I witnessed Sarah exiting the building. My body froze, and my brain ceased to function as I watched the two of them briefly kiss before disappearing into his car. My wife is having an affair with my boss. What should I do? Update number 1. Hey everyone! It's been a week since I discovered the affair between my wife and my boss, and everything that used to be routine in my life has turned into a complex ordeal. I wanted to share that the responses to my situation have been quite varied, but the majority of you have suggested that I confront her. As much as I would like to, there's a significant issue with this approach. You see, I've worked diligently to establish my financial stability, and I don't want to jeopardize that over my wife's infidelity. I can't comprehend why she feels the need for another man. It's only been 2 years since we got married, and she's already bored with us. I've been losing sleep trying to find a rational explanation for her actions, but so far I haven't found one, aside from the possibility that she's simply a terrible person who doesn't grasp the gravity of her choices. Additionally, she's completely unaware that I've discovered her affair, and I'm at a loss for how to proceed. However, some of you have suggested seeking help from Emily, and I've been leaning toward that idea as well. It seems like a good way to balance saving my career while still exposing Mike and Sarah. I treated Sarah the same way all week so that she wouldn't suspect anything. Meanwhile, she's been discussing our future with children and our house as if everything's normal. It really hurt when she brought up the topic of having children with me. I love her, and I'd love to start a family with her. However, it took me less than 24 hours to come to terms with the fact that those dreams are now shattered. My wife is manipulative and not a very good person. She sleeps beside me, dreaming of her future, while she's involved with my boss in some way. My priority was securing my position at the company before taking any action regarding the affair, so I arranged to meet with Emily. Unfortunately, the meeting didn't go as expected. Emily and I were acquainted because of a formal dinner we had attended, but I can't say we were close friends. She welcomed me into her home, but what transpired next shattered my hopes. As I confided in Emily about her husband and my wife, she went into complete denial. She blamed me for having impure thoughts and found my accusations highly offensive. I was unprepared for her reaction and couldn't make her understand the seriousness of the situation. She rudely told me to leave her alone, and I complied. However, before I departed, I asked her not to inform Mike and suggested she investigate the matter herself before alerting anyone else. She simply nodded and gestured towards the door, signaling my departure. It was my cue to leave. 2 weeks passed and I hadn't heard anything from Emily. I was growing increasingly restless. During this time, Mike and Sarah's secret meetings continued at least twice a week. Sarah claimed she had to work late into the night and couldn't come home. Knowing all of this was happening, I couldn't help but feel a surge of revenge and anger welling up within me. My frustration eventually transformed into pure rage. Now I was determined to expose both of them for their heinous actions and their pretense of loving their spouses. Finally, after 2 weeks, I received a call from Emily. She asked to meet me, but this time not at her home. We met at a nearby cafe, and she appeared unwell. I inquired about her well-being, and her eyes were dark and filled with circles, hinting at her distress. She began to sob, and I didn't know how to comfort her, so I simply allowed her to cry while holding her hand. After she collected herself, she retrieved her laptop. I was perplexed because I had no interest in seeing explicit images of her husband or my wife. Emily showed me several photos of young women, mostly in their late 20s, many of whom were married. I could discern their marital status from the rings on their fingers. So, what am I exactly looking at here? These are the findings from the private investigator I hired to look into my husband's secrets, Emily explained. My gaze dropped to the floor, and my brain felt like it was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Emily had hired a private detective to validate the truth behind my story. She believed that if she confronted her husband without solid evidence, the truth might remain hidden forever. In her quest to uncover information about him and my wife, she discovered that Mike had been involved with 5 other women. My heart ached for her, and I felt remorse for my role in this situation. Emily appeared to be a kind-hearted person deeply in love with Mike, making it difficult to fathom his unfaithful behavior. With the remaining empathy in me, I turned to Emily and asked how I could assist her. What Emily revealed next was as surprising as the fact that Mike had been dating 6 different women. Emily's full name was Emily McNeil, and her father was the owner of the company where I worked. After Emily married Mike, her father appointed him as the CEO of the company. This revelation shattered my perception of Mike as a self-made young billionaire. Emily assured me that my job was secure and even promised a promotion if I helped her expose Mike's infidelity and facilitate their divorce. I readily agreed because I, too, desired a divorce. However, there was much at stake for both of us. Neither of us had any intention of giving a dime to our spouses in the divorce, so we agreed to meet again the following Monday at the same location. In the meantime, we needed to come up with a revenge plan that was both reasonable and justified. When it came to providing evidence, we had a substantial amount. The private investigator had amassed proof of Sarah's and Mike's affair. Upon returning home, I was surprised to find Sarah waiting there. She had prepared a nice dinner and urged me to freshen up quickly so we could enjoy it while it was still warm. However, my recent meeting with Emily had left me deeply troubled, and I couldn't keep my thoughts to myself. I openly confessed that I intended to divorce Sarah. As I stood under the running shower, my tears mixed with the water. I couldn't comprehend why all of this was happening. Despite everything, I still loved Sarah, and had dreams of a future together with her. Her casual demeanor was causing my heart and ego to ache. I had an overwhelming urge to confront her with the concrete evidence Emily had given me and demand an explanation. However, I knew that if I took that step, both Mike and Sarah would become prepared for what lay ahead. Our plan to humiliate them and ensure they didn't get a single penny in the divorce would be compromised. Additionally, I couldn't bear to involve Emily any further in this complicated situation. So I went to the dining room after my shower and did the complete opposite. I talked, I laughed, and I had dinner with my unfaithful wife. She had no idea. Silly girl. Here's an update. Hello, for the past month, Emily and I have been meeting every Monday to discuss our plan going forward. I've received a lot of supportive responses for the step I'm about to take, and I'm grateful for this community. Sometimes it's tough not to lose sight of yourself and feel like the worst person on the planet for doing this to your spouse. But the positive words you've all shared show that you understand where I'm coming from. I don't want to waste my life's work on someone who's clearly having an affair with my boss. Yesterday was Monday, and it marked our final meeting before putting our plan into action. Emily and I spent a month gathering evidence and tracking their movements, how much time they spent together and what they did. Some of the information was hard to stomach, but Mike's file was much thicker than Sarah's, and I could see the shame in Emily's eyes regarding her husband's infidelity. Why do women think that if their husband is a jerk, it's somehow their fault? It's not. It's not. If anything, they should be relieved to leave them. And it's the best thing you can do for your own healing. We made the decision that we wanted to expose them in front of everyone, and the perfect opportunity was at our office event, which was just a week away. Quite ironic, considering I was a candidate for Employee of the Year, and Emily was going to be there presenting awards to the employees. That moment was going to be our chance to reveal the truth to everyone. Emily wanted her family to be present, and I simply wanted Sarah to feel the humiliation she had brought upon herself by toying with my love and emotions. Finally, the day arrived, and we all gathered at the finest five-star venue in New York City. My heart raced, and I breathed nervously. Sarah, Emily, Mike, and I were all under the same roof, and our lives were on the verge of a major change. Emily was on stage presenting awards, and the announcement for the Best Employee of the Year award would come towards the end. I knew I would receive the award, but my speech would alter the dynamics of the company. To be honest, I was scared. When they called my name for the award, I went up on stage, and Emily handed me the microphone along with the award. I whispered, "It's showtime." And just then, the projector behind me went dark, and the spotlight shifted to Sarah. Every person in the room turned their attention toward her. As I uttered these words, "This award goes to my loving wife for always supporting me and allowing me to excel in my career." I expressed gratitude for her being my boss's clear favorite, and for revealing her true nature early in our marriage. Right after I spoke those words, the projector began displaying rather personal pictures of Sarah and Mike. The audience reacted with shock, gasping for air, and hushed whispers filled the room. Half the people gazed at Mike, while the other half fixed their eyes on Sarah. Emily swiftly grabbed the microphone from my hand and declared, "I will expose you, Mike." Emily's father, Joshua McConnell, the company's founder and president, was also present, or at least he used to be. Emily looked at him tearfully as he canceled the event and instructed the guests to depart, leaving only the five of us in silence. Mr. McNeil, clearly furious with Mike, started hurling curses at him, vowing to ruin his life and career in no time. Mike appeared as though he had seen a ghost, and Sarah couldn't even muster the courage to meet my gaze. She stared at her shoes for the next 15 minutes, until I left. I went directly home, and as I stepped into my house, a flood of emotions overwhelmed me. My life was a mess, with Sarah's unfaithfulness, my shattered dreams, and the risky move I made that could destroy my career. I cried my heart out and felt more alone than I ever had before. I was on the brink of divorcing my almost new wife. We had only celebrated one anniversary, and I was about to tarnish her reputation and crush all my dreams in court over the next few months. No matter how much self-pity I felt, I couldn't muster any excuse or sympathy for Sarah. I knew I was doing the right thing by filing for divorce, so I opened a bottle of scotch to help me fall asleep. It was already 2 a.m., and my mind wouldn't let me rest. I'm almost tipsy as I type this now, so I hope I've covered all the awful details of the most horrific day I've ever experienced. As for Emily and me, we've already initiated divorce proceedings, but our lawyers were waiting to submit the paperwork until after the annual function. We wanted both our spouses to witness the full extent of their actions and not keep it a quiet divorce. Now it's done. The paperwork will be processed soon, and we'll have to face each other in court. I'll try to keep you updated in the days to come. You guys are the only ones I've been able to share my story with, to be honest. Here's update number 3. It's been quite some time, like maybe 6 or 7 months, since I last posted anything about this dramatic chapter of my life. To be honest, I've lost track of time. When you're either extremely happy or in immense pain, time just slips by. That's what happened to me. This will be my final update because the story of Sarah and me has come to an end. I'll share all the details, but it's difficult for me to even type this out. I want to say thank you in advance to all of you who had kind words for me and made me believe that I'm not a terrible person, just someone who's hurting. After the annual function night, I drowned my sorrows in alcohol, and when I woke up the next morning, Sarah was nowhere to be found. Didn't bother looking for her or trying to reach out when I was in a more composed state. I called Emily to check on the status of the divorce papers, and she told me that both Mike and Sarah would receive the papers within the next 2 days. I was prepared, ready for Sarah to look me in the eyes and see the pain she had caused for no reason. The day of our first court hearing arrived. Our lawyers, handpicked by Mr. McNeil himself, were on our side, so I had full confidence in our representation. Besides, we had all the concrete evidence required to prove our case against our cheating spouses. It was finally time for me to inform my parents about the situation before they learned about it through the news, because, well, that's what happens when you're involved with a billionaire. When I called them, my mother started crying and sympathizing with me. They never imagined Sarah doing something like this, but they supported my decision to go public and get a divorce. In no time, they flew to New York to stand by my side. Upon reaching the courthouse, I noticed that Sarah was living with her parents, and both of them were there with her. No matter how shameless it may seem, parents are naturally inclined to support their child, right? Fair enough. The legal proceedings began, and our lawyers went after everything related to Mike and Sarah, their careers, reputations, behavior, courage, you name it. They were thoroughly shamed. I felt sorry for Sarah's parents having to witness it all, but it was her choice to have them in the room. So it was all on her. Everything was on her. By the end of the presentations from her lawyers, there was absolutely no room for a defense. The room was filled with a sense of guilt, and I was 100% confident that our divorce would be granted. But Mr. McNeil had different intentions. At his request, the lawyers demanded that Mike be removed from any position within the company and be given a negative character certificate, making it extremely challenging for him to restart his career in this field. Both of them were stripped of any legal rights over our finances. Instead, they were required to pay a certain amount as compensation for the mental harassment they had caused and were not allowed to claim anything from our joint accounts or finances, including those of our spouses. Mike even had tears in his eyes, and Sarah was overwhelmed with guilt. We were all too young to have gone through this, but in the end, we emerged victorious. As we drove back home, I received a text from Sarah, a heartfelt apology where she expressed her deep remorse for putting me in this situation and mentioned her plans to move out of town soon. My parents tried to console me, and we were all too distraught to discuss the matter any further. The case and its details were widely covered by news channels, with our pictures displayed on screen. The entire New York City must have learned about what transpired among the four of us. It was a revenge I had desired, even though it wasn't the life I had envisioned with my wife. I genuinely believed that what happened was what she deserved. I assumed Mike's position as a manager, just as Sarah had promised. And no, it wasn't easy returning to that office. My personal life became a subject of ridicule, but I was unwavering in my commitment to my career. I still believed in love and loyalty, hoping that someday I'd find the woman I deserved. I had no idea what became of Mike, but I heard he left town too. All right, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in. Story 2. Full disclosure, this isn't my personal story. It actually happened to a friend of mine who has been living in the USA for a long time, although I'll adjust some of the dialogue for clarity. My friend gave me permission to share his tale online, and to make it easier to narrate, I'll present it as if it happened to me. I've also altered a few details to protect privacy. I share my living space with my girlfriend Karen and an old grade school buddy named Jake, who was employed as a sales rep. Our residence is situated on the outskirts of a well-known city in the United States. In my late 20s, I found myself in need of employment after the bar where I had been working closed down. Recognizing my desperate situation, Jake reached out to me and informed me that his new girlfriend Jill had recently acquired a motel with a small kitchen and was in search of hired help. Naturally, I eagerly embraced this opportunity, especially since Karen wasn't currently employed, our bills were accumulating, and our health insurance premiums were looming. I gave Jill a call and arranged to meet her at her new property for a formal introduction. Jake had already personally introduced me to Jill and had informed her that I had practical experience in the hospitality industry. To provide some context, my father is an electrician and firmly believes that if you can afford to pay someone to fix something, you can probably do it more affordably yourself. He imparted a wealth of knowledge to me, and he continues to do so even today. Following a 30-minute conversation, Jill tested my skills with various tasks, such as rewiring an outlet, unclogging a sink, and quizzing me about liquor laws. It goes without saying that I was hired on the spot. Initially, the work primarily focused on preparing the property for the business's opening. Jill had expected minor tasks like painting, replacing fixtures and furniture, but we soon discovered that the electrical wiring was in terrible shape, requiring a complete rewiring. This posed a budgetary challenge for Jill, as it would have exceeded her financial plan. Fortunately for Jill, my father was between contracts and offered his services, utilizing leftover materials from previous jobs, which had already been paid for. Any new materials required would be covered by Jill. Regarding payment for his labor, my dad simply requested a steak and beer on Friday nights. After 3 weeks of assisting my dad, the wiring was not only completed, but also met all the required codes, and it cost significantly less. Jill and I spent the next 2 months painting all 15 motel rooms, the bistro, and the bar, as well as cleaning the kitchen and cool rooms. Jake would occasionally offer to help, but would always leave after 20 minutes, claiming he had to make a sale. Jill often worked late into the night because this venture was her dream. During my spare time, I would take furniture home to restore, returning it once it was in good condition. The business finally opened after 6 months, thanks in part to my dad's assistance, and it launched under budget. Jill managed the business and oversaw the kitchen, while I worked wherever I was needed, whether in the kitchen, at the bar, or tending to maintenance. I was on a salary, held the position of second in command, and could work in any role as required. Things were going smoothly for a year. Our business was profitable, my dad enjoyed his weekly beer and steak, Karen appeared content, and Jake continued working as a sales representative for a pharmaceutical company. One day I fell ill at work and decided to clock off early and head home. Upon pulling into my driveway, aside from a sinking feeling in my stomach, everything seemed normal. Jake's car was parked there, but that was to be expected since he lived with us, so I didn't think anything was amiss. As usual, I parked my car behind Jake's. This detail becomes important later. When I opened the door, I was greeted with the shocking sight of Karen and Jake engaging in an intimate act on the couch. Jake hastily grabbed his pants and made a quick escape through the back door upon seeing me. Karen and I had a heated argument that lasted late into the night. She tried to shift the blame onto me, suggesting that I was never home and spent too much time with Jill, even though our relationship was strictly professional. I eventually went to bed and suggested that she could sleep in Jake's bed as it seemed more comfortable for her. I also called Jill to inform her of the situation, as Jake was her boyfriend. Jill was understandably upset about Jake's infidelity, but admitted that she had suspected he might be seeing someone else. She kindly offered me a room at the motel until I figured out my next steps. The following day, I loaded my personal belongings into my truck. Jake's car was still parked there because I had blocked it earlier. I told Karen that she could keep the rental and the furniture. I informed her that I would return for my tools in a few hours and requested that she not be present. That afternoon, when I returned home to load my tools into my truck, I stumbled upon an unfamiliar bag beneath my workbench. Upon closer inspection, I discovered a significant quantity of small tablets. The way they were packaged and hidden led me to suspect they were likely party pills. A thorough search of the house revealed 2 more bags and approximately $12,000 in cash. It all added up, and I realized that Jake's supposed pharmaceutical sales job was actually a front for his pills-selling activities. It occurred to me that Jake might have given these pills to Karen for their intimate moments. I was furious at first, but then I realized I had everything I needed for payback. Jake's car was still parked in the same spot. I entered the house, took his spare keys, and put on some gloves I found in the garage. I stashed half of the money and 1 bag of pills in his car trunk. I removed his spare tire from the wheel well and concealed the bag there. The other 2 bags I discreetly disposed of down the storm drain in the alley behind my house. As for the $6,000 cash, well, Jake did cost me a house full of furniture, just saying. I sent a message to both Jake and Karen following the typical script for someone who's hurt. "I can't believe you did this. We were friends, blah, blah, blah. I've left. I hope you two are happy together. I then made an anonymous tip to the local police and ATF, describing a man matching Jake's description loading what appeared to be narcotics into a car that matched Jake's vehicle. I also provided a partial license plate number that matched his car. It didn't take long for law enforcement to locate the car and discover the pills. What I didn't anticipate was that Karen was driving the car at the time. She was later released when they realized she was driving the wrong car at the wrong time. However, a warrant was issued for Jake's arrest. As a bonus, I later found out that not only were the police after Jake, but his supplier was as well, since he had lost a substantial amount of product. Fast forward 3 months, I bought a house, still worked with Jill, Karen was expecting Jake's child, and he was on the run. I suspected she was staying in touch with Jake because she suddenly left the area when she was 8 months pregnant. 12 months after the incident, during a night of drinking, Jill and I mixed business with pleasure and started dating. That was a decade ago. We're now married, have 2 kids, and just opened our 3rd business. Dad still enjoys his weekly steak and beer. I heard a rumor that Jake and Karen ended up in Alaska, but I can't confirm it. I do feel a bit remorseful about it now because Jake inadvertently made it possible for me to be with Jill and live a wonderful life. I genuinely hope they're doing well.